Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we will see one more method or a technique to deploy our fine-tuned transformer model or any pre-trained transformer model. So if you could remember the couple of videos we did with the transformer, the first thing we did actually to fine-tune transformer on our custom dataset, and then we looked at how to deploy this fine-tuned transformer model as a part of a Streamlit application on a Streamlit cloud. The next thing we saw how to deploy that same Streamlit application on AWS FARAGTE, which is one of the AWS services, as a containerized application. Now, what if you want to, instead of having a web application like a Streamlit thing, what if you want to expose your model as a API? And that's what we're going to do it today. So we're going to create the fast API and we're going to expose our model as a REST API. So if you could remember what we did, so we had our model, which is capable of taking a text as an input and was able to predict whether the given text is a toxic or not. So we will look at it into again. But what is our purpose? We want to build an API, okay, that will receive some input and predict according to what our model is going to do. As I mentioned, we're going to use the fast API for that particular thing. So this code you might be familiar, like this is the code we have used even in Streamlit, which is nothing but taking a tokenizer and the model from the Hugging Face hub. If you have seen our previous tutorials, you could know that this is where we can put a pre-trained model name or any your model that you have uploaded to the Hugging Face, and this will simply load tokenizer and model that you can use it. So let's start with the basic. Let me comment everything, and let's start with a very basic fast API function or a fast API gateway. So this is what, let me comment everything. Now if you could see what we have. So first thing we did, you know, we are importing a fast API class and a request. Request also we are not using. Let's focus on only the fast API thing. And then we create an object of fast API. We call it as an app. Once you have an object of fast API app, you can declare the routes, which your REST API will expose those routes so that someone wants to make a request. This is how they're going to make. So this convention here is this. This is your app name. Okay, this is kind of a decorator in Python. This is the app, and then we are saying we want to declare a get method, and here is the address or the resource path. So currently it is the slash, which is actually your root or home page. And once someone requests to this particular path, we want to execute this function. Now it is not taking any input, nothing. Whenever someone requests your root domain, you're going to retain a hello world as a dictionary. So let's save it. This is the basic fast API what it does. And then how do we run a server? Here is this thing. Now we are this is like convention in Python where name is equal to main. It means that my file, this file main.py, when this file is going to directly run as a, let's say, Python main.py, then and then it is going to run, and not when someone wants to import this particular main file in their own program. When you run main directly using this like command line or directly by Python, that is where this thing going to execute. And when it execute, what it is going to do, we need to import UVCon also, because that is the server fast API is using. So what it does, we use uvcon.run, which takes the name of our app instance. Now the convention is we have to give the file name where our app instance is there and the name of the app. So main is actually our main.py, that is the name of our file, and this app is the name of our instance that we created, which is the app instance. So it takes the file name, app instance, and the host where we are running. We are running on a local host. Which port? This is the port, and some other attributes, whether we want to reload whenever we make any changes, or the debug is true when you are actually development mode. So basic thing, created the object, declare one simple root, and then we are running the server. So let's run this python main.py and you will see. So when I run this python main.py, nothing but I'm just running this main.py file using Python, you could see the server is starting, and it is starting on localhost 8080. So let's go to the localhost, and we can see localhost 8080. And you could see when you visit a root means you are not typing anything here. When you are simply visited the root domain, you can see the output coming as a hello world. That is what this particular thing, right? And think of this way. Instead of this, let's say we can declare the one more root, another gate root. But here, let's give some path. Let's say, we will call this thing as a, let's call it something like, now here we can call it as, hello. Let's say this is the path called hello, and we want to return simply again the hello world, or we could simply return as a hello hello, just to differentiate what it is there. So you could see just I saved, it started reloading. This is what that particular thing is doing. When you make any changes and save, it will reload our server. Now we have one more route that we can access, which is slash hello. So let's go to our browser. Okay, and let's refresh this thing is still there, what was already running. Now let's request the hello. You could see hello hello, that is the root. Now it is able to do things. So this is pretty easy to declare a root. Root is nothing but the path that any other service is going to access, and once it calls this particular path, what function you want to execute. So let me we can do same thing with the postman also. So if you go to the postman, this is the one of the tool that you can make an API request. So let's create the new request here. Let me create the new request here. Let's call it a localhost hello path, and there we need to provide the URL, and this is the type of the request. So we are going to do a get request, so we don't need to worry about the other stuff. Let's take our path. We want to call this part on a localhost 8080. So let's put our localhost, or better I copy paste simply here from here. Let's copy this localhost and then submit the request. And you could see we got that hello hello here also. So you can, since it was a get request, you could access via browser also, and via some tool like postman, or you could even make this request programmatically using Python or React or anything like that, right? So if I remove the hello, we should see our root domain which is returning hello. This is what we are. So this is the basic a fast API program you can think of. And what does we required for that? So if you look at our requirement.txt, we do have our torch and transformer, which is anyway we are uh, having it from the last couple of videos when we built the Hugging Face transformer model. But the new thing we have now is the fast API and the UVCon. So this is the thing. And if you go to fast API website, you know you could see there these things are already there, that how to install. You can see the pip install fast API and the UVCon standard, that you could also see yourself. And this is even the simple thing what we just tried there, right? It declaring a simple root path or a root API. That's what we did. Now we're going to do some interesting thing with it. So you could say that this is one more good thing, that is the slash docs. This is where you can see all APIs available and the documented documents associated documentation. You could see we have two routes, and we could see those two routes when you go to slash docs, right? And okay, let me go back here. Let's refresh this thing. Yeah, this is the route, right? So we can click on the route and it will show some information about that route. And if I look at right out, and we can execute, and since now we are executing this slash hello, and we got this hello hello in return. That's what we have it, right? So we saw now you could access that same kit using browser URL, even trying this document what we have it here, and then even via the postman API. So now let's go and focus on the thing that we wanted to achieve. Now we are familiar with fast API. So uh, let's go back and uncomment our function, which is nothing but loading our model from the Hugging Face hub. So we are loading a tokenizer, and this thing, since it is showing it is not recognizing, it means we need to import this thing. So let's import this thing. We also require a torch because we are dealing with transformer in PyTorch, right? So once we have our function which can give you the model, we can call that function here. This is pretty similar what we have already done. Then we have one dictionary. which is simply mapping between if one comes, then it is toxic, zero comes, it is non-toxic. That is what we're going to use. And here is the our main thing that we want to try. Now, since this is not a GET request, we want to receive some text from the user, and then we want to take that text and do prediction. Don't worry, we will go line by line that particular thing. We also require numpy. So now all these things we have, let's go what's going to happen. Just like we declared our get root here, now we declare app.post, a post method that we want to declare, and then we decide a route called predict. So when someone makes request to this predict path as a post request, then we want to execute this piece of code. What does it does? First of all, it's going to execute this function called read route. It is an async function, so you can check what is asynchronous programming, you know, and synchronous programming. So I'm not going to detail into that. So this is like function we have, let's say read route, what is a function that we're going to call whenever someone going to make a request to the predict, and we're going to receive that particular object of type request. Here is the request is of type request that we have imported here from a fast API request. Now that fast API request has a method called request.json. Again, this await keyword actually coming from an async nature of the API. And so this is nothing but we are getting whatever the JSON data that we got inside the request, we are loaded in this variable data, and we are also printing it so that we can see it. Next thing we are checking, does the JSON data we received as a part of request, does it has a text as a key inside it? Because this data will be a dictionary. Because if it has that text key, then we can do prediction on that text. We take that text data as, let's call it as a user input. We're going to pass that user input through our tokenizer. Again, this step we have seen multiple times. So once we pass through a tokenizer, we get the tokenized input, and then finally we pass that tokenized input to model so that model does a prediction. So model produces its output, and that output has a field called logits. We take that logits is nothing but the prediction for toxic and the non-toxic. So what we do, we find out using numpy argmax which, whether it's a 0 or 1, which has the max value, and that's what is our prediction. So here we will get either 0 and 1 as a prediction, and then we are using the dictionary above and selecting. If it is 0, we want to say it's a toxic comment, and if it is non-zero, it's a non-toxic comment. So you might feel that I'm going fast because last couple of videos we have seen. So if you are the one who are looking at this video first time, and if you're not understanding something, I encourage you and see the earlier videos in our playlist regarding to the transformer and its deployment. And if I don't found the text key here, I'm just going to put that, no text found. That's what do. And then finally I'm going to create a response as a dictionary, where which has two keys. One is the received text. I'm passing the same text what I received from the user, and then I'm saying this is what my prediction, which is nothing but we got from the model, that is the y prediction. Okay, and we're going to pass that thing. What is zero here? Since we are passing tokenizer the list of inputs, but we know that there is only one text input that we have received. So that is the first element of that list is actually our first prediction. That's what we are using this zero as an index. And then we are passing it as a response. So let's try this particular route. So let me, I think it has reloaded it. Now, maybe the first time, let's let's call this thing the predict route on our localhost. Let's go to all this thing and let's check on here. Okay, let's try the same get request what we had. We can modify it, or we can also create the new request. Let's go to add request, and let's make it the post request because we want to make a post request. Let's copy this localhost here on our new request. Better we call it. It is a post request. So we want to make post request to our localhost 8080, but then we want to pass some input to it, that request. So let's click on the body. In the body, we click on a raw thing, and inside the raw, you have a couple of options. We want to pass it is as a JSON thing. So our API is expecting a text key in our JSON. That's what if you remember our Python code, and this is the text we want to pass. So we have built as a toxic comment classification, so we can pass something related to the toxic and not toxic. So maybe we can pass this something like um, no, that was good point. So this is the text we are passing, and we want our model to do a prediction on our text. So let's submit the request, and we got something method not allowed. Why is that? This is okay. Sorry, because we haven't given our path, right, which is the predict is the path we have, right? So if you go to our thing, the post request we want to make it a slash predict. So that was the missing. That's why it said this particular method was not allowed there. So now let's try again. Now you could see this is what we said. That was a good point, and this is our prediction saying that it is a non-toxic comment. And we should also, if I go back to our terminal here, you could see we have received this text. That was good point. Why? Because we have printed our data. So data is what we got from our request.json, and that is the JSON thing that we have sent. Now let's send something else, like maybe I type it like go to help, and let's submit the request, and it says that now it is a toxic comment. If you look at here backend, you will see we have received text is a go to help. So this was pretty easy. We just converted our existing model prediction code and wrap that code inside the predict post method using the fast api. And if you have any doubts related to the fast api, you can always go to the documentation, and you could see how to declare those get routes or the post routes kind of stuff. So this was the first part of our video, that we are able to create the fast API locally. We created we created the fast API object, and then we declared one method called a predict of type post, which receives some JSON data. And if that data has a text key or the text element inside it, then we want to use that user input, do a prediction, and finally return response as a dictionary. And that response is two part. One is we are returning the same thing what user is giving us, that is nothing but our user input. And the second thing, the prediction we did using our fine-tuned transformer model. And this is pretty simple. If there is no text, it's going to send us this. Let's try this thing, right? So let's say instead of text, I make it like text 2, and let's send the request. And it is saying that no text found because it is expecting a text. That's what it is expecting. So I hope you found this useful. So we will go to now second part, where we want to take this particular thing and what you can we need to take this thing and deploy the same thing what we did on localhost on the AWS App Runner, so that everyone around the world can access that particular app. Let's create some GitHub repo and push our code there. So I'm here on my GitHub repo. Let's call it something. I'm going to call it, let's say, YouTube BERT and maybe Fast API. Okay, let's call this thing. Let me keep it private, and I'm clicking on a create repository. Once I have this repository, these are the instruction for me that how to push my local code to here. So let's first do this git init, right, which will initialize our repository as a git repository. And then usually we use git add to add our files. So we have only two files. Let's add the main.py, and the other one we have is the requirement.txt. Okay, we can check the git status whether we have added them or not, and we could see we have two files added. So let's do git commit -m, and let's put message saying that fast API code, something like it. And now we have committed our code. Let me take it, yeah. Now what we want to do, we want to push. So let's try git push, and you see it is not able to push because we haven't told where to push. So we need to put that particular thing here, right? So let me go back to instruction. So we have added our files and we also committed. Next thing, we want to create some branch, and then we need to add the remote origin. No need to remember. Usually I just copy paste from here, and then we are pushing it. So let me copy these three lines, right? These three lines, paste it, and finally push. So once we push, we should see our two files, occurring on GitHub repo. So it seems to be successful. Let me go here and we can check. Let's click here, YT-BERT fast API. See, we got our code just recently uploaded. So once we have our code which is available on GitHub, right? And that is the basic step we need to do no matter where we are deploying things. So let's go to the AWS App Runner. Let me sign into my AWS account. Okay, once I sign into my AWS account, then we will go to that particular service which is called the App Runner. So you could see I have recently visited, that's why you could see it here. But if you don't, you can always search App Runner here. Let me go there, App Runner. So you could see if there are any other services, if I have run, then I have already tried and there is one service which is running, and then I can click on a create service to new service to run on this app runner, right? So let me go back again and see the app runner, the documentation or just landing page of AWS. So app runner is there to deploy a production our web applications or an API, and it is like easy to use. You can scale with the traffic and you don't need to worry about, you just tell where is your source code located. App runner can take that source code, deploy it, and it will give you an urls. Okay, so it become very easy for a developer to deploy things. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go and let's create a service. Now it is asking you, you want to deploy it as a Docker image or a source code. I will go with the source code because in the past video I have shown how to deploy a Docker image. So let's go with the source code here. In the source code, it is asking from where to, we need to connect our GitHub. So currently I have already connected a GitHub here, but if not, you just click on add new connection here, and this will pop up a window where you can give some name to it, and you just log into your GitHub account. It is very pretty simple, just connecting your GitHub account to this thing. I have given the GitHub app runner as a name to my connection. So once you authenticate yourself, whatever your username password for GitHub, this AWS will be able to access all the repositories you have there. So let's search our repository, something related to the fast API, and we have given this YT-BERT fast API because that's what the repository name we have, right? So I just type that thing, and there is only one branch, so no need to worry about. So we connected, we found this particular repository we want to deploy with this particular branch, and it says that do you want to deploy automatically whenever you make any changes to this particular repo. For now, let's make it manual, that we will decide when to deploy, when to not. Let's click on next, and then configure all setting here. Use configuration file, no, we're going to give everything here. So that is what the configure all setting here. Choose a runtime, let's choose a Python 3, and then it will have some default port 8080, that is fine. The next thing it is saying, build command. Whenever you're going to deploy this particular app here, which command you want to start with as a building command, means whatever the files you have, you need to make them ready for the deployment. And then the start command, once everything you have, how do you want to start your application. So you could see there are already suggestions that this pip install requirement, because once the code goes there, we want to install the requirement, so that become our build command. This is how we're going to build our files, by installing the requirement. Let's type that same thing, install pip install hyphen r requirements, and that's what we have, right? Requirements dot txt. Let me see whether there is no spelling mistake. A requirements dot txt. Okay, txt. Okay, and how do we start our app? We know how do we start our app. So we tried something like, where is app, python main.py. So let's type that same command there, right? Python main.py. When everything is fine, we want to call the python main.py, which will call our thing. That's it, this is what we wanted. So we give runtime details, we are using python. We, once the code is there, we want to run a requirement.txt, install that all particular requirements, and then this is what we want to start our server, which is python main.py. That's where our server code is there, uecon run. That's what we have here. Click on next, give some name to service. Again, I'm going to give this YT bird, maybe fast API. service name something. Okay, and then one virtual CPU is fine for me. That is the minimum thing. We have 2 GB, and 2 GB is enough for us what we are doing. All these things are default. Let's click on a next. It will show all our details whatever we have selected, right? Yeah, that's what we have, everything related to. It talks about which repository we are connecting. This is our GitHub repo. This is the detail that we just selected. All are good. Let's click on create and deploy. Now this deployment will start. It's going to take our repo code, run that pip install command, and then start our server using the python main.py. So it might take some few minutes, and so I will pause the video and I will restart it again whenever that deployment is finished. Now you can see our service is created successfully here, right? So we can click on the default URL that we got. We click here and we should be able to see the get request, because we know that when we visit our root URL with the get request, we should get the hello world in a return. So let's try that same thing, using the postman. So let's copy this URL. I'm just copying this per default URL that we got from the app runner, and go to the postman, and instead of localhost, you know, let's try here. Instead of localhost, we're going to try the URL that we got, the URL and the predict method that we want to do. And let's send a request. And you see, we got the response. We can, change this thing. Let's say, okay, so we are putting some non-toxic comment, and let's hit the request. Okay, so we got this non-toxic, and this is coming from a server and not locally, because we are hitting the URL that we got from the AWS kind of thing, right? Here we don't need to put, what you call, put our port. Locally we put, because in our local was lot many applications are running here, and that's why we want to isolate this application called 8080. But if you could remember, when we created our app or a service, we already declared which port we want to use, and with respect to that port only we got this default URL, right? So we don't need to put our port again. But then we can check whether this request coming from the server, because if you could remember, we are inside our request, we are printing our data whatever we are receiving. So let's see whether we could see that particular thing on this AWS service. So we can check the logs here, right? You could also see that this is running on 8080 port inside the logs. So if I click on view CloudWatch logs, this is the logs we should see related to our service, this YT port and everything, right? So if any request it has received, we should see that request there somewhere. So I think here somewhere we should see our thing, right? Do we have anything here? No, I think these all are logs related to when it health checkup. Let me see whether do we have any other logs here. No. Let's click on this thing, and these are the events. Which is the latest? This is 35. So let's click on. Do we have any other events here? Ideally, we should have our request here received. Yeah, we could see there are some lot of things happening inside. Transformer installation, all our thing installation, you could see. Then do we have anything? No, these are all related to the deployment related, but you don't see any new events here that we made a request. Let me see whether we can get something here. No, ideally we should have some logs here. Do we have those logs here inside this thing? Okay, let's click on this application logs and let's see what are those. Okay, I think it's loading. That's what we check, right? We in CloudWatch. Receiving log events between. Okay. Now it is receiving all the events. Okay, I think load more events. Let's see what will happen. Yeah, here now you could see. This is where our request it received, right? So it received our post request. That was a good point, which was a non-toxic comment that we pass. and we could see another request it receive is text go to hell. So it did record this thing. I think I should have got this thing in the cloud watch also, but anyway, the point was to show you that that request did received by the AWS service, though we don't see here. Let's click on this. Yeah, we could see it is there. So our both the request we could see that it has received. Let me go back. Okay, no, let's go to the app runner again, and you should see our both the services running. If you click on our latest service that we started, we should see it's all details. And the bottom we have application logs, and this is the log actually that we just saw. If you click on view CloudWatch logs, we are able to see. And this CloudWatch logs, with almost every AWS services, you could see your logs, not just this app runner. It could be your beanstalk, AWS beanstalk, or even AWS lambda kind of services. You should be able to see all the logs or the requested or the request received by your particular service. I think this video got quite a long, but yeah, I think now you understand, how to create the API and test it locally, then pass that particular files to your GitHub repo, and then connect your GitHub repo inside this AWS App Runner, and then finally deploy it here by putting those all configuration details. And once it is ready, you get a domain, which domain is nothing but your address, and you can make a request using Postman or any other. You could request from using Python or React. Hope you found this video useful. I know you can go and check the other videos. If you have any difficulty, understanding the code written in video with respect to our model prediction all, then you should go and check my earlier videos, because this is where I have explained that code in more detail and in depth. So thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe. I do create videos related to natural language processing, transformer, and other problem statement related to NLP. Thank you.